Rory, thank you so much for jumping on the AIM podcast.
Oh, I'm a pleasure to be here. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Dude, you're a legend. There was two things. I just think we should break the ice here. There was two things when I met you in the Intercontinental Hotel Waterpalooza that I initially thought. One is that I knew just by looking at you pretty quickly, not doing a super in-depth like gauge at you. I just think I can beat you in Fran. So we definitely need to set that up.
I actually will take that Pepsi challenge.
All right, let's get it then. I'll be in
Yeah.
Tennessee soon. The second thing is the beard, dude. We had Josh Bridges on probably about a month ago, and that was the first thing I talked to him about. I was like, dude, you've literally created a brand through your facial hair. That's insane.
It's true. Josh has, man. I even have, I've got one of the Rogue shirts from back in the day that was literally just featuring the mustache. He's an icon. This is temporary. The beard was, it was a bet. And like, as it went, it just kind of stuck to me for a little bit. So right now, and I don't know, maybe you can help me in the show or the people that are listening can help me. I have to establish an end date because I'm
No
not
way.
I'm not a beard for life guy. Like it's just not going to happen. But it could be seasonal. It could be just like the first day of spring is like currently my end date.
How long have you been growing it?
The last time I shaved was at the CrossFit Games.
Okay. Wow.
And so it's not that long. And actually, it's a great opportunity for me to always shout out this guy because he really is a legend.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Kevin Ogar?
Sounds familiar.
Okay, Google the name. Kevin Ogar was a fantastic regional knocking on the door of games type athlete.
Okay.
Tragically injured and paralyzed in a barbell accident at an event back in Southern California, and now probably a decade ago. But anyways, stuck with it. He's been an inspiration. He's taken on other sports and he's taken a big role in the adaptive community for CrossFit. So
Amazing.
he's the one, and I keep giving him shit because I bet him, or sorry, he started it. He was like, "Hey, if you grow a beard, I'll shave," and he still hasn't shaved. So
No way. That's
maybe
not
that's when I
happening.
shave. Is when Ogar shaves.
That's not a, yeah, I was about to say, I feel like at this point it's such a good beard. You really should like almost market it or do some type of challenge before you shave and really draw awareness or like to do something cool. I think that'd be sweet.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I really, it'll be hard to part with, but the good news is it always comes back. It always comes back.
That's right, man. All right, dude. That's so good. So you guys have been settling in. Y'all obviously had an awesome, turnout at the Waterpalooza event. You guys crushed it with the Mayhem team and everything. How's everything been since the event?
Tremendous. Yeah, it was a good, I think it was really healthy and rejuvenating for everyone to be together, first of all. So
For
a lot
sure.
of times those events are a drag and it's like, shoot, I got to go do this thing. And it's a little bit, it feels like work. Almost universally to a person, everybody kind of came back and like, man, that was fun.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. Tennessee's been a lot different with COVID for better or worse. And, but I know that a lot of the world has not gotten to see each other. They haven't gotten to hug each other. They haven't been in the stadium, the stands, watching athletes throw down. So, from an athlete perspective, getting to perform, they work their butts off and they seldom get to actually show it off. And so I think for them, it was really good and healthy, it kind of leading into the season. And as a fan, I've never had a better time than I did at this Waterpalooza.
Dude, it was incredible. That was my first time at Waterpalooza, and like I didn't know what to expect. But I absolutely loved every second of it. Like I just wish it would have lasted another week. It was so much fun.
I know. It's wild. It is. They just do a tremendous job of, especially on the community piece, right? It's almost like you could go to Waterpalooza and never watch any competition and still be stoked.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that's so good. Speaking of performance at the event, man, how would you rate your performance in the gauntlet?
um, well, I would give some qualifiers first. One is that I didn't do the entire thing,
And you didn't
but
stretch.
and I didn't stretch. Like to my credit, I probably told you this story, but I was in the Intercontinental on floor number 11 when I got a text from Tommy Marquez that said, "Hey, come to," I forget what the name of the floor was. He's like, come to this floor," and I was like, "Oh, I know what he's up to." And I said, "When are you starting?" He's like, "We already started." So he had already started the first workout. I ran from the
Uh,
Intercontinental, got to the competition floor. So in fairness, I think that I did really well, but I only did 3 out of the 5 workouts.
no, I think you did really well. I mean, that was your warm up, I guess, to run to the Intercontinental or from the Intercontinental.
That's all you need. I don't know if you're a Kelly Starrett fan, but he made famous the phrase that a leopard never stretches. And
Mm,
so, you got to be in that ready state. You got to be ready at all times. So
that's pretty good. I wish I
yeah,
could apply that. I just finished playing college basketball and I could count on I don't know if I should say that. I had a lot of teammates that did not stretch at all, and I was very envious of that. And I have to go through a pretty long warm up to get my body functioning the way it needs to. But That's a good quote. I'm gonna use that.
I promise that it only gets worse. And so if you don't work on mobility now, and all those guys who didn't have to early, like I'm blessed with mobility, man, like
Really?
since a young age. But if you don't continue to work on it and enhance it, I just passed 40 trips around the sun. So
Wow.
it's my 40th year, and like things are a little more creaky, dude. It takes a little longer to get warmed up. And I see people who did not put in the work that I've been putting in over the last 10 years, and they're way worse off.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I would never have known that.
but yeah, Kelly Starrett, he is the owner of the Ready State. And so if you haven't checked out Ready State, first of all, he would be a tremendous podcast guest. He's he's featured in Tim Ferriss's podcasts and books, and he's just like a treasure trove of one-liners and knowledge bombs. But he's also like just a very, very, very smart individual when it comes to CrossFit, but also just human movement in general. He's the dude.
Dude, that's amazing. No, I'm gonna definitely check him out and do some research, and maybe we can get him on here soon. That's awesome. Well, I want to dive into your story, man. I think there's a lot of things that we can pull out from your life that are super cool. You've done some amazing things, some really cool, opportunities have come your way, but you've also worked extremely hard and you're very skilled and good at what you do. So I'd love to kind of hear more about you kind of growing up. I know you were in California for a while out at school, and then your athletic background, and obviously your transition into CrossFit. So I kind of just want to hear
Sure.
more about, how all that kind of happened.
Yeah. I'll back it up even further than California. I actually grew up in Texas. And so I grew up in Austin, Texas in an awesome area called Westlake, which is very well known for high school football. And so when I was a freshman in high school, for example, Drew Brees was our quarterback on varsity.
No way.
Yeah, Nick Foles graduated from Westlake. We had just like a litany of fantastic players who went on to like NFL greatness. And we were the most winningest team of the 1990s in Texas high school football history. And so it was the thing to do. I mean, I'm 6'2", and at the time I was already like 217 pounds. So
Wow.
football was kind of my destiny and what I wanted to do. Anyways, I mentioned that only to say that like that, I was short duration, high power. I had a soccer background as well. So I was decent at running, but towards the end of that career and especially into college, I just sort of lost that and really focused on heavy lifting and power output. Yeah, man. And then, years went by. I went to USC is the reason that I ended up in California. I had what they called an invited walk-on status, which means, hey, you got a spot on the team if you come and get it. And if I'm owning it, I just didn't show up. I got to school and I was like, hey, this is really fun. And there's a lot of stuff to focus on. And football would be one more thing. And I just didn't have it in me to kind of play the Rudy character. And, sometimes I regret it. I was there during the Reggie Bush, Carson Palmer years. So even if I just sat on the bench, I'd have 2 championship rings.
Yeah, rings.
But yeah, man. And that led into just, I never left the gym culture. It went, transitioned into bodybuilding a little bit. And I melded that with a really huge passion and love for the outdoors. So I was usually spending winters in ski resorts like Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And then summers I would bang around and do something like, work seasonal work in Alaska. And you tell me whenever you want me to fast forward because it's a long story, but the real long story. Okay.
Sure, dude. I love this.
Okay, good. So so my post-college years, I lived in Europe for a short time. Again, following kind of seasonal work and just having a good time, trying to see what I wanted to do in this life. And when I came back to the States, I would transition from winters in Jackson Hole to summers in Alaska, where I was a fishing guide. And during that time, it was, again, like I was super interested in human performance. I had friends who were doing physiology degrees. And so I got some personal training credentials. And about that time, CrossFit hit the internet in a big way, largely because the movie The 300 came out. Like a lot of people share this story. They saw Gerard Butler with like a 16 pack and just, a radical beard. And they were like, I want that.
No doubt.
And so if you followed The 300, you found a gentleman named Mark Twight who runs Jim Jones. And if you dug even deeper, you found that he had roots in CrossFit. And so, so I took CrossFit to the Alaskan wilderness that summer and just started kind of doing it on my own, screwing it up, doing everything wrong, limited equipment. And I mean, literally we were in a location where you had to have a float plane just to get there.
Wow.
And that was it. So when I got hooked, I loved it. It was, it played to my strengths in a lot of ways. And it just completely buried me in the endurance, gymnastics, pull-ups and skill-based stuff. And I was hooked. And if you fast forward just a little bit more, I came back to the lower 48 from Alaska, and I found my first physical CrossFit gym. And I was like, yes, I'd never had the community aspect of it. I'd never had an actually fully stocked gym.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of coaches that I just really looked up to, and I was hooked from there.
What did the early like days of CrossFit look like? Because obviously I don't know a ton about the history like you do, but the evolution of the sport, there's been a lot of new movements, a lot of new workouts. Like, what did it look like when you were starting out?
Man, at its core, it looked almost exactly the same. Like, I come to CrossFit Mayhem, there's hundreds of members and all the toys you could ever hope for. But when we say 3, 2, 1, go, we're still doing constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. And that's what it was back then. And yeah, so to me, to be fair, like at its core, it hasn't changed. And that's why, I don't know if we get into stuff later about just how much turmoil there's been in the past couple of years. Yeah. At the end of the day, for me, I, as a person who even got like fired from CrossFit Inc. eventually, I was the very next day in my garage doing CrossFit because it's what I love to do. And it was the same, everything that I loved was still there about it. It was just, you know, the politics and the weird stuff. You can take that and just kind of throw it out, and you still have that kind of purity at the base. But it was smaller. That's an easy one. Yeah. It was you know, at the time we thought it was massive, but when I got into CrossFit, we were probably just cresting around 3,000 gyms, and that, you know, that dramatically spiked like years later in 2010 is when it just went to the moon.
That's incredible. So you had that kind of base kind of foundation of your story. And then I want to hear kind of more about your actual position working for CrossFit, getting into the announcing side of things like that. I think that's super interesting. Yeah.
Well, and so I'll pick up where I left off, which is I found that gym, realized first of all that there were physical gyms. I almost didn't know that. And I plugged in hard, and I decided that I really wanted to be a coach. Like, I've got a huge heart. I'm super empathetic, and I love watching people progress. And remember, this is long, but like the CrossFit Games didn't even exist at this point. It was just a bunch of people going, throwing punches on a daily basis, getting better, soccer moms, Navy SEALs, 60-year-olds, whatever. And so I started coaching, and I eventually got a position at that gym. It was called US CrossFit. It's owned by a guy named Mark Devine. Have you heard of Mark?
I haven't heard of Mark.
Okay, so Mark was a commander in the Navy SEALs. He's a really impressive individual. Wow. And he's since come up with, I know that you're way into mindset. He's come up with a lot of mindset protocols. And again, he maintains a podcast, and he's a really interesting dude. But he was also the owner as a private citizen now of NavySeals.com.
Wow.
And so these guys, in addition to doing CrossFit Gym, which is what was my jam, they were also taking in kids who wanted to go to BUD/S and become Navy SEALs. And they were sort of, I guess you could consider it like an inoculation. They were showing them what it would be like once they got to training, and increasing the success rate of these kids who would then go on to BUD/S and try and become SEALs. But the way that it worked back then in CrossFit in the big scene was you got your level 1, which means you can coach at a gym. Your level 2 was actually, it was compulsory that you would coach people in person and be graded on your coaching. Wow. And so I took my level 2 shortly after my level 1, probably within 6 or 7 months. And I was lucky enough to do really well on it. I had Chris Spieler, Andy Stumpf, and I can't remember my third instructor. Oh, Bosman. Adrian Bosman was one of my instructors.
Wow.
and they judge you and they grade you, but it was also an interview. And so at the end of the weekend, they're like, hey, dude, you did really good. And what that means is that we want to invite you to actually teach at level 1s as you did some internships. And so fast forward again, did the internships, got the job, ended up teaching seminars, which is the best job in the world for a young single person. Get to travel the world, go cool places, just plug in on a weekend by weekend basis. And like, just the energy was insane. And after a couple of years of that, so that was 2007. So the following year, again, picture this, like you just went to Waterpalooza. That same year, I'd been doing CrossFit for 3 years. I've been coaching for 2 of them. I was starting to train on the level 1 staff. And I was like, I took back to my membership. I was like, hey guys, there's this thing in Northern California called the CrossFit Games. It sounds really cool. Like if anybody wants to go, let's go. And everybody's like, nah, man, like, what are you talking about? So it was the CrossFit Games were that small. They were still on Dave Castro's ranch. And I went up there, and one young lady from the gym said, "Hey, my dad has a house nearby in Monterey. It's 4th of July weekend. I'll be up there. Let's hang out." And I'm compressing this greatly, but that became the first date that I had with the woman who's now my wife.
Let's go.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. And
awesome.
so me and Angie, pretty much, that was when we started the courting process, and then we started dating shortly thereafter and got married about a year later. But yeah, so CrossFit Games was super small, and at that games, I had some really good buddies. I'll send you a picture after this, because somebody yesterday actually sent me a screenshot of the first interview that I ever did at the CrossFit Games. And I was just a total joker, like behind the scenes. I did an interview with Dave Castro's back because he wouldn't talk to me. Stuff like that. We're just having a good time. And I was lucky enough to catch the attention of the guy who ran CrossFit Media. And again, to put it in perspective, he contacted me. He contacted me after those CrossFit Games, and he said, "Hey, things are getting crazy, and we're getting really big really quick. I need a second employee." So he literally was doing it all by himself still in 2008. And so massive growth back then, like you've seen the organization now, massive growth back then meant like, hey, we need 2 people, not 1, doing all the media. And at the time we thought that it would be a great job, or we wanted to grow our family. And I knew that CrossFit was like really close to my heart. And so we jumped on it, and we moved from San Diego, where we were, up to Santa Cruz, where HQ was located. And I'll save you the really boring details, but suffice it to say that from that time until 2012, there was nothing on camera. Like every once in a while we would do a workout video, or every once in a while we would kind of pontificate on coaching and do some coaching pointers and stuff. But the on camera and like in front of the camera stuff for me didn't happen for another 3 years. I started as an hourly employee, and my first job was to write abstracts for the CrossFit Journal. So I would read the article, I would boil it down, and I would put an abstract in the CrossFit Journal.
Wow.
I was editing a lot of the videos from 2009 games. I edited them, ran the CrossFit Games website. And if you go back, like our style back then was hyperlinks on every single word almost. So it was interesting, man. It gave me a huge diversity of skill behind the camera that I think eventually, when we did decide to do the update show, which was in 2012, I had to really work on presentation and chops in that sense, but I knew the process, and that really helped to, work with producers and work with camera guys and work with editors to understand what they wanted and made their job easier, and got the point across more succinctly.
That's incredible, man. I mean, I think there's so many things to pull from that. Like a lot of people talk to me all the time about like different opportunities in life and ways to like build your brand or like get new, opportunities really. And I think the big thing that I see from you is like you put energy into your opportunities. Like your energy created opportunities. You going to the ranch when no one knew about it, just because you had that passion, that drive. Like that's how things happen for people in life. And like that's just like the encouragement I want to give people listening is like your story is a huge testament to that. Like if there's something you're passionate about, just put energy into it, because that's when you'll find the opportunity. And I think that's so cool that you did.
Thank you. And I can back that up and just say, well, first of all, I'm currently rereading Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors. And I read the story of Derek Sievers this morning, who started CD Baby back in the day. And that was one of his big things, was just say yes. His whole music career started with going and taking like the crappiest guitar gig that he'd ever heard of. And that transitioned into him like gigging all the time, making a ton of money off of it. But in the CrossFit space, even at Waterpalooza, there's a number of examples of people like the woman who now runs all of Waterpalooza's media and forward-facing branding, Kristen, who you met. She started as a stage manager for us at some of the regional events, just like helping out, adding value. And so people who come and they're like, "Hey, I really want to be involved. What should I do?" And they want to show you their resume and show you how great they are, especially in CrossFit, or at least the CrossFit that I grew up in. I guess I'll call it like my generation of CrossFit Inc. It would show up and provide value. And there were a million people who were like, you would see these people hustling on the competition floor, moving equipment. And 2 years later, you would find out that they were a captain in a very distinct portion of the military, or they were a leader of a SWAT team back home, or they ran some sort of a multi-million-dollar business, or at the very least, like a very successful CrossFit gym. And you'd be like, wow, never would have known it because you look like you are just a hustler, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm sure that it led to the success that they had in their other life. But it's just a lot of people who are willing to just show up, put their head down, detach their ego from it, and take
Mhm.
whatever job was available just because they love being involved with the CrossFit space.
Dude, that's so good. I think that makes a lot of sense. A lot of times I feel like people feel like they're owed something or like they deserve something. I'm like, you deserve what you earn. Like go earn
Yeah.
it, like provide value and then create the opportunity for yourself. And I think that's such a good motto. And we just got to keep hammering that home because it's so true.
Yeah. And it's hard for like, you're of that generation. So I can't do a blanket statement, but
Yeah, no
it
doubt.
seems like the generation that's coming up, yeah, they're having a hard time with that. And I don't know what the roots of it are. And maybe every generation says that, right? Like I'm sure the World War II vets were like, these damn kids, and our parents are probably saying the same thing. But it does seem like a lot of times people are like, yeah, you see shortages in the workforce right now. Well, I don't want that job. Well, what are you gonna do? I don't know yet. Sit back and wait for something to come to me. Doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think show up and provide value is like, I did it, but it would still be the advice I would give to my younger self.
100%. So when you got into announcing, like, is that something that you found, like that skill set that went into that position? Is that something you always enjoyed doing, or is it more so of like, hey, this opportunity is open. I just love the sport, and I will figure it out. Like, how did that go about?
I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that like it was my dream job.
Yeah.
So as soon as we were like, hey, we're gonna do some on-camera stuff, my hand was in the air, and I was like, I would really like to do that. So um, I was one of those people, I guess. I went to school in Los Angeles, and I convinced myself that I thought it was like, well, I do think that like the Hollywood scene is, um, it's just not my style, I guess. I'll leave it there. But I did love like show hosting and stuff, and like old school Rogan. It was funny. I should show my kids Fear Factor. Have you ever seen Fear Factor?
I haven't.
Bro, you got to watch it. It's on
Okay.
Netflix now, just
Okay.
to see young Joe Rogan. So it's really funny because my kids don't understand the time space continuum. So there's old shows on Netflix, and I'm like, hey, that dude right there is this dude, and I'll show them like Joe Rogan on his podcast,
That's
and they're like,
cool.
no way, that's not the same person. But I thought that would be the coolest job, to be travel around, do cool stuff, or even some of the travel shows and things like that. But I guess I didn't allow myself to kind of pursue that dream. So when it came up in the context of a sport that I love and a community that I love, I was like, oh, heck yeah, I think I can do this. And I didn't have formal experience with it, but I had always, I was a ham. Like when the camera went on, I enjoyed it and had a good time. So, but the answer to your question, I guess you asked if I had to work at it, and the answer is hell yes.
Mhm.
I wanted to, for better or worse, like I really wanted to excel. Like I wanted to be great. And I think, and man, not to drip on it too much, but the level one training protocols, and mostly in the form of like public speaking and education, and the people that you had mentoring you, is really, really robust. Or again, was at the time, and I see no change now. And so I came into the on-camera stuff
Mhm.
being comfortable in front of the camera, but having worked really hard on public speaking with some fantastic mentors like Pat Sherwood, Todd Widman, Adrian Bosman,
Wow.
Andy Stumpf. And they all, if you've been to a level one, I'm not sure if you have, but if you haven't and you go, I think you'll be blown away by the way that these people present. You're like, wow, you must be a professional speaker for a living. Most of them, I at least speak for myself, they're not. They just came up in that system. And again, they love the they love the content, and they loved the people they were speaking to. They really cared about it. But then they studied and they worked their asses off. And so I kind of laid that over what we were doing at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I think it's cool to see how like you take the initial passion of what you enjoy doing and your love for it, and then just continue to fine tune and craft, your skill set and to see the evolution there. What was it like transitioning out of that role into now what you do with Mayhem?
Man, so much to unpack. But in the short answer is fantastic, amazing, right? Being behind the scenes, flexing completely new muscles. This kind of goes down the pathway of, I don't know if you know this, but I helped Catherine David's daughter write her book.
Wow.
And I've known Ben Bergeron for a really long time, and I had a lot of access to them. And one of the things that is pivotal in Katrin's story is she had a massive failure in 2014 and failed to make the CrossFit Games. And she came back and she won it twice. And so that really resonated with me. And what Ben said to her when she missed the CrossFit Games is he texted her and he said, "This is the best thing that will ever happen to you." Mm-hmm. And story goes, she threw the phone across the room and she didn't talk to him for days, and she was really upset. But then she embraced it. And anyways, I was lucky that when I got let go from CrossFit, I was in the finishing stages of writing that book. And those are just some amazing people with some amazing thought processes, and I had access to that. So I opened myself up to realize, like, hey, this could be the best thing that's ever happened to you. And so I got to Cookville, which was our plan before I ever got fired, and really did exactly what I told you I was going to do. I plugged in and I started adding value. I was actually working with Noble at the time on their media, and little by little, it became clear that there was real synergy with me and Rich and me and Mayhem, and it had nothing to do with me having to be on camera or worry about what was going on my social media or geek out about what people thought about me as a person. It was all really in service of what the mission was here at Mayhem, as people of faith and as athletes and as businessmen and women. And so in that sense, it was really, really refreshing. The other side of it completely is that it was one of the most painful things that I've ever gone through, and my identity was in crisis for 2 years. Wow. So, and we go down that rabbit hole if we want to, but for anybody who's lost a job or a career before, I didn't buy into this, but in actual fact, it's like losing a loved one, or you have to mourn it like it's a death almost, because it's such a large part of your life, your identity, your day to day. I like literally woke up the day after I got fired, and I was like, well, wow, what now? What now? And all the anxiety of like, how am I going to make a living? But also, wow, I miss my friends, and will the community still embrace me? Am I still, what role do I play now? Gosh, man, if you don't stop me, I'll keep on talking. But I'll reference one more book, and that is Rich's book, which resonated with me a long time ago. Rich, the spoiler alert if you want to buy the book, but we'll hopefully update his book soon. But the end of the book was basically like in 2010, he had this massive identity crisis, which was he couldn't climb this rope, he failed, and it really just jumbled him. He was like, wow, I'm so caught up in this being an athlete that I've lost myself. And that's really when Rich decided to throw himself at faith and root himself in his faith. And that's really just kind of a rock that you can't shake somebody off of. So as opposed to kind of like having this false idol of, hey, I am this amazing athlete, it was more like, hey, I'm a man of God, and here's what I believe, and here's what my faith means to me. And that smacked me in the face. I was like, shit, I don't have that. I don't have that, and I need that.
That's good. It's crazy you bring this kind of tie this element into this episode, but we were having Bible study last week in my apartment, and we were talking about pretty much the same thing. Like, my basketball career probably didn't go the exact way I wanted. I grew up wanting to play in the NBA, and I thought, that was going to be my dream. It was all about me, right? It was about what I wanted to do. And God put something else on my heart to start this movement to help people in this way. And at the time, like, that was a hard transition. But I think what you find is that as humans, we get so caught up in short term, like our moment, this right now, when God can see your whole timeline. And so just having faith and trusting that even the setbacks that we think are, going to derail our lives can actually be putting us right on the path that he has in store for us. So I think that's so sick, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a game changer for people. And you know what? And I'm open to the fact that, we're all faith-based, but I'm open to the fact that that's not where everyone's at in their current walk. But I do think that still rooting yourself in values that are not, and now it sounds like a promotion because it kind of is, but there's a guy here named Jim Hensel, and he's got a program called Mayhem Mindset. He's a faith-based guy, but his program is really about values. And what he does through a series of exercises is he helps you really think, because a lot of people don't think about what they're all about. And because they're hard, challenging questions, you have to journal, you have to have some hard conversations. But at the end of it, the point is to have a set of values that, like, if I asked you, you could stand up and you could tell me exactly what you're about. And it roots people in that as opposed to just blowing in the wind and going with other people's opinions. And it's of similar value in my mind, where people just, they don't have that usually. They don't have something that they're rooted in where they can go back to on a consistent basis to answer the question for themselves. What do I think about this?
Yeah.
Man, this crazy thing happened in politics and CrossFit in the world. What do I think about it? Not tune into CNN and watch people back and forth and be like, oh, I like his point. Oh, I like her point. It's like, no, stop. Like, what are your values? How do those lay over the current system, the current problem that you're facing, or the current issue that you're trying to evaluate? And divine for yourself. Like, what do you think? Not somebody else.
Dude, I 100% agree. I think a lot of times too, it's like sometimes those moments that you referred to, like, in your career and Rich's career, like those moments of adversity that people shy away from are the moments that you truly learn your values and truly get to know yourself and who you are. And I think that's powerful, man. I appreciate you sharing that.
For sure. Yeah. And, like I think at the end of the day, like, at least in my world, that's why people, not everybody gets along, but like people in CrossFit generally kind of have a pretty quick bond, because in a way we're putting ourselves up against adversity intentionally on a daily basis. And you can say that for any kind of form of fitness, right? Or any kind of discipline, really, is that, you're kind of making yourself tougher. You're inoculating yourself against the big things by giving yourself a little dose of adversity every day.
100%. So what is your current kind of the landscape of your current position with Mayhem look like? I know you do a ton of different things. You're kind of all over the place, crushing different departments or different angles, but what's kind of like the main part of what you do now?
Yeah, sure. So when Rich offered to bring me into the Mayhem umbrella, he said, hey, I don't have an agent. I'd like you to be my agent. Wow. And so my first role was athlete representation for Rich exclusively. We've umbrellaed that out. So Haley Adams is now represented by us. Luke Parker, Tyler Christoffel, and Sam Cornier, who did fantastic at Waterpalooza. Actually, Tyler did as well. So that takes a tremendous amount of time. One, because I love it and it's fun to do and fun to watch those guys grow, but also because by virtue of being Rich's representative, that also kind of blankets out into being Mayhem's representative. And so it's more of a business development role at this point for all of Mayhem, because you can't really have there is no Mayhem without Rich, and you could have Rich without Mayhem, but he's integrally involved with it and inextricably linked, I guess you could say. So that takes the bulk of my time, working with new partnerships, trying to find out what direction we want to be in 5-10 years. And then also helping out tremendously with the media. So I've been able to kind of step back as we've had one of our junior editors rise up and become more of like a senior producer. But I'll oversee content and help input where I can, and then obviously take part in front of the camera if I'm needed. But they seem, the kids are shying away from me now. They got the beard. I'm too dad-like.
Let's go. I love that, man. I think you're doing a lot of really cool things. I think one thing that I'd love to hear more about is the dynamic of a relationship like you have with maybe Rich or Haley, and like how you manage that and how you go about obviously handling it from a professional business standpoint, but also a trust and like relational standpoint, where I'm sure there's got to be a nice blend of both. Like, how do you kind of manage that?
Yeah. Man, I think it goes back to kind of what we were saying about show up and add value. Someone like Rich, just frankly, like a lot of people come to Cookville. I've seen it since, right? Like there's a lot of people want to throw opportunities at him, and a lot of people want to kind of glom on and attach themselves. I don't think out of, well, I know it's not out of any kind of ill motives, but it was important to me that we were friends first. Like I said, I came here without the intention of working for CrossFit Mayhem. I thought that I was going in a completely different direction. So we got to deepen our friendship. And if I'm going back even further, and this is no BS, Rich is one of my favorite athletes and has been. And I don't mean like just in CrossFit. I mean, like he's one of my all-time favorite athletes. So I admired him tremendously. Literally before I moved here, reading his book really resonated with me and helped me bolster my faith. And like seeing how forward facing he is with his Christianity was really, really impressive and inspirational to me. So the fact that I already looked up to him a great deal, had a lot of respect for him and his family, was built in and hard baked. Like you just couldn't make that up, So the relationship stuff came first and still does. We hang out a lot. We do a lot of activities with family stuff. And I think that's critical, because the business is important, but I think if you don't understand what someone's long-term goals are, you don't understand where they're trying to take life, then it's really hard to kind of negotiate on their behalf or understand what companies would be a good fit, what people wouldn't. And then on the business side, he's a great straight shooter. Like, he knows what he wants, he knows what he doesn't want. And there's only been a couple of misses, like a lot of stuff was really organizational. I mean, if you think about it, I've only been here for 2 years. So that means that for most of Rich's professional career, he really hasn't had agency.
Wow.
He's just had good people surrounding him. And so it's no magic that I'm doing. It's just that he's a good person who attracts great people, and he made good choices along the way. So my job is really to enhance those relationships that exist, and then try and find new opportunities, bring them to the table. And again, Rich, he's not going to compete forever, and he'll be the first to tell you that. And so he's really starting to get a lot more business minded and think about what it does look like 5 years down the road. And so he's really interactive in that sense, which makes it easy.
That's awesome. Like, what are some other things like Mayhem and the brand in general are working on? Like, are you guys developing or creating different like angles of what y'all are doing?
Yeah, Mayhem always has been a leader in the competitive online training space. And so we're really just trying to enhance that community. You'd be amazed like how far reaching it is. We've got people who are here right now from Hong Kong, and
Wow.
they're like, oh yeah, we follow you guys every day. Like, we're on Mayhem Athlete, we're wearing the gear, we're tuned into the YouTube channel. And so it's refreshing. And it's a good reminder to me that it's a worldwide thing. And so we're really trying to just enhance our offerings and make sure that we're serving people, not just, hey, here's a workout every day, but hey, here's some really tangible instruction. Here's some interaction. Here's some ways that we can actually kind of bolster and make this community stronger, ways to interact directly with Rich, either in person or, via technology, which is kind of the way since 2020. Yeah. And then in terms of what we're doing here on site, we've got a lot of exciting events that we're trying to be cautiously optimistic about. We've had trouble through COVID with a couple of events that didn't get quite, the failure to launch, so to speak. And so we're cautiously optimistic about a couple of those. And then at this point, honestly, we're just focusing on this competition season because, it's gonna be a tougher one. And once Rich goes into competition mode, we go. But the most fun part about what we're doing is that it's largely based off of who Rich is, right? So 3 days after Waterpalooza, for example, he went back to Tampa and did a flag football competition. Last year we did three off-road triathlons, and the dude's a monster on a mountain bike.
Wow.
And whenever he does something, he's like, yo, let's go. And it's like the crew comes, and so it's pretty damn dreamy in that sense, where like last year we started a fantastic relationship with the Army, and they were like, hey, listen, we want you guys to come out, see the life of a soldier. And by the way, we're going to throw you out of airplanes, blow stuff up, get to shoot guns, run around on obstacle courses. Man, we did a pheasant hunt, we did an elk hunt, we did just all these really cool life experiences that, oh yeah, by the way, we're putting them on YouTube and we're interacting with people online and hopefully entertaining, but they're really, really fun to do.
That's amazing, dude. Yeah, I want to talk more about your personal training, because I know you kind of touched on some triathlons, and I saw some recent posts that you might be entertaining some more endurance challenges this year. So before I want to talk about that separately, but before I do that, like previously, how have you kind of balanced? Because I'm very curious for myself as I'm kind of trying to grow this brand and do other things, but keep fitness and my training a big priority. How have you balanced your personal training and nutrition goals and all that stuff in like intertwined with your work and everything?
Terribly. If I'm being honest,
Dang.
horribly. And so when I was until recently, and that's not true. I had some bright spots, but especially my early days in CrossFit, I was really prone to workaholism. And so because there was a lot to do and we were growing rapidly, and again, like we thought we were changing the world, and I didn't want to let any of it pass me by. And so there was a huge focus on, I'm not joking, like 14-hour days, oftentimes in front of a computer, and work was the last thing I would do. I'll send you a link to this too, but the early days of Roe versus Boz, I mean, I would literally in a day, and I'm not proud of this, I'm just telling people because it's true. I would drink like 2 5-hour energies in the day just to stay amped for the broadcast and everything that we had to do. And then I would take the field of play drinking a beer, And so it was like, and that was kind of early days CrossFit. It was like, hey, this is just a fitness program, because it was before the games popped up, right?
Right.
Even at the 2008 games, like people would walk off the competition floor and go get a keg beer, and and there was barbecue going on. You know what I mean? It was just a little bit of a vibe. And so anyways, it was fitness for me was I was certainly above average, and I would get a training session in every day, even if it was just Tabata air squats. But it wasn't my top priority. And that all went in fits and starts. Like I'd go through periods of motivation. 2014, I was an absolute beast. And then I actually had an ACL tear, which set me back quite a bit.
Wow.
But I learned from those experiences, and I don't know, for whatever reason, it took turning 40 to be like, hey man, you really could maximize this, and you really should, because time's limited on this earth, and you might as well. So yeah, I did make some major changes in the last 2 years. Being here has been inspirational again, because I'm around the type of people where it's not hard to do this. Like in fact, it would be harder for me to just stay stuck to a computer screen all day than it would for me to get 2 training sessions in a day. But 2 years ago, the first thing that happened was just from an introspection standpoint, and honestly not because there was a huge issue, but I chose to stop drinking alcohol. And I had, prior to that, it was like, a couple drinks a night here and there every once in a while. When I was young, like if I was in my 20s, I'd tell you, man, I was an alcoholic back then, and probably needed some intervention that I never got. I was an absolute brawler. Again, not proud of it, but it's just the way that it was.
For sure.
Had a great time, but if I could mentor myself back then, I'd be like, hey man, pump the brakes. You've got so much potential in there. You could do great things. But anyways, 2 years ago, I was like, look, there's an expiration date, man. Like, time is undefeated, and why not now try and just maximize what you got? So giving up alcohol was the first thing that I did. And that kind of segued into just hanging out around Rich and hanging out around the guys here. And literally they'd be like, hey, we're going to go work out again. Hey, we're going to go do these triathlons. Hey, we're going to go do this crazy activity. And I was always fit enough, like even during my poor row versus Boz years, like I was always fit enough to not embarrass myself. And I was like, man, after I did the first sprint triathlon, I was like, dude, hey, you could actually do good if you tried, like
100%.
I'm naturally good at mountain biking. And it was just kind of a big kick in the butt, man. And then the inspiration built and built. And this year, after doing a lot of that stuff and seeing a lot of results, and having access to, I always had access to the best minds in training, recovery, weightlifting. I've been, friends with the Bergner family since 2006.
Wow.
But I didn't take it any more seriously than like, hey, let's just do one workout a day and then just do whatever the hell you want for the rest of the 23 hours of the day. And yeah, it's been really cool. I because my wife wanted to do it, I'm in the middle of 75 hard. Are you familiar with that?
Dude, it blew up all over social media, man. I'm familiar with it. I
Yes.
haven't done it myself yet. How's it going? Hard?
Awesome. No. I think because it's a mental fitness challenge and not a fitness challenge, like there's some things that are very hard, yes, but it's
Right.
more just force of habit. It's the most effective tool that I've ever used for changing your habits. And so it's been great. It's funny, viewers don't know this, but like right before we started, I was like, hold on, dude, I got to pee. It's because I literally have to pound this gallon jug of water every single day, right? So
Let's go.
there's little things like that where it's like, yeah, it's sort of challenging, but it also relit my fire. Where last night I got back from my son's basketball game, was in almost in Nashville, which is about an hour away. We got home at 9:30. I had to do the bedtime stuff, get him down, prepare for the next day. And then I was like, I still have to get my second outside workout. So last night I put in like 12 miles on the mountain bike at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I didn't want to do it, but dang, I was so refreshed afterwards, and it felt great,
That's amazing, dude.
Yeah. And it keeps you dialed into your diet as well. So RP strength is like, I follow macros, and I guess I always kind of thought that I was, because I was generally fit and I've got favorable genetics. But when I actually was like, no, man, I'm going to follow it with no cheat days, which is part of 75 hard. Dude, I've gone down, like I'm under 10% body fat now. I've dropped over the holidays. I went pretty nuts, and I got up probably heavier than I've been in a long time, but now I'm down lighter than I even was in high school. And some of that has to do with the endurance that I'm doing, but yeah, anyways, that's a really long story short, but I have absolutely loved the program. It's simple, and My favorite thing about it is that you can't pay for it. Like there's nowhere to go and pay for it. He sells an app for $5, but you don't have to have the app to do it. And so it's the coolest thing. The dude, he's got Andy Frisella he's got a podcast that has no advertising on it. And then 75 Hard is free to do. He just is like, hey, here's the rules and here's how it works. Go get it if you want to and don't if you don't. And like, I love stuff like that in the world that we live in, where it's like, hey, take this supplement, like buy these shoes and do this thing. I really appreciate that. He owns a supplement company. And so it all tracks back. He's a smart dude, but it's free.
That's amazing. He's the guy that owns First Form.
Yeah. There's brothers and he's one of them.
Cool. Yeah, dude, you got me thinking about it, bro. I might need to
do
start
it, man. Do it. No reason not to.
100%. Now, after the podcast, I do want to talk to you more about nutrition and breaking some stuff down.
Cool. I think, yeah, anytime.
But yeah, as we wrap this thing up, man, I want to hear more about your challenge this year, because it sounds like you maybe done some stuff in the past, but you're really taking a shift on some of these new challenges. And I was looking through some of the ones you posted about, and they're exciting, man. So what was kind of the motivation to do that, make that transition, and like talk a little bit about, what you are going to get into?
Yeah. So, there's two. The first part, what motivated it, is really easy. Rich Froning and my mom. And wow. Rich Froning is an obvious one because he's doing. We're doing a 24-hour bike race. I'll break these all down. We're doing a 24-hour bike race. We're doing a 100-mile bike race. I'm sure we'll do some sprint triathlons in there. And then, though there's two more that have nothing to do with him. So I say my mom because my mom turns 70 this year. And she's a triathlete, and she's like, hey, dude, in October, I want you to do a half Ironman with me. Wow. And when your 70-year-old mother challenges you to do a half Ironman, you don't say no.
That's epic, dude.
And so it was kind of a kick in the ass that I needed. Like I've always wanted to, and I dabbled last year with, all of them were short, like 800-meter swims. And the longest bike we did was a 20-mile mountain bike. But so that really fired me up, and I'm excited to do it, one with her, and also just to do it, period. And then the third one, or the other one, I guess, probably the fourth or fifth one, is that we're doing something called the Haute Route, which in French means high. And it's basically a ski traverse. If people haven't heard of it, you can just Google it, Haute. It's a very famous ski traverse that starts in Chamonix, France, and it ends in Zermatt, Switzerland. So you start between two very famous mountains, Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn. And the way that it works is like, there's a series of paths every day. So you'll hike on your skis with a big pack, ski down, hike up, ski down, hike up, ski down. But every night, the point is you get to these chalets that are up in the mountains, but they're stocked. And so like, you'll have a great dinner, you'll have a warm bed, you'll have some kind of like friendship and fellowship. And then the next day you'll get on your way. But you're hiking through the French and Swiss Alps, which is, I spent some time there when I was a kid. I mentioned I did a ski season over there, but I'd always wanted to do this ski traverse. So I'm doing that with Matt Chan and Sheree Chan, who are absolute legends. If you're not familiar with them, go check them out.
Yeah.
Matt was first generation CrossFit. So, he got as high as second on the podium, and he's just got this massive training brain, and he's a really fun dude, and he's a very outdoorsy guy. So I haven't physically spent time with them in God knows how long. So I'm really, really excited to actually kind of like be there with them and do this. But it was a bucket list item for me, where I was like, when they asked, I said, absolutely, just let me know.
That's amazing.
Yeah, man. So that one's coming up. And then, the only one that I want to build out is the 24-hour race, which is called 24 in the Canyon. This will be our second year doing it. And we glossed over this story, but you probably run out of time.
Oh, no,
but,
you're good.
Okay, cool. So this one is, you literally have a 4-person team. Last year, of course, Rich only wanted a 3-person team. So we got our butts kicked.
Oh my God.
Meaning his teammates. Like, we didn't get our butts kicked in the race. We got our butts kicked as his teammates.
For sure.
And you just do a lap. You do an 18-mile lap through Palo Duro Canyon in Amarillo, Texas, which is gorgeous. And as soon as the sun goes down, you just turn your headlamp on, you keep going.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So you get back, you tag your partner, they go. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but an absolute blast. It's to benefit cancer, which is really big in my heart because I actually had testicular cancer in 2010.
Wow.
And so as my CrossFit career was taking off, I had my first child. We were on ESPN for the first time. I got nut cancer, and it was, it led into some other stuff too. I had a massive issue with in the post-op scans. The cancer was done with quick. But in the post-op scans, I had to get a major lung surgery as well, which was non-cancerous, but still extremely dangerous. And so we didn't really talk about the recovery from that, but it was probably the biggest challenge that myself and my wife have ever been through. Actually, it was without a doubt. And so anyway, since then, I do my best, and I don't do a great job of trying to billboard the fact that I am a cancer survivor and let people know, because I've had just so many great experiences where, again, I'm not the world's best athlete, but I do okay. And so people who are going through that in real time, or people who have gone that in the past, both the lung surgery and the cancer, they're like, oh man, it's inspirational to see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like,
100%.
yeah, like that was 10 years ago for me, and I'm way fitter than I was before it ever happened. So, yeah, it's good news.
Dude, God bless, man. That's amazing. I'm glad to hear that, you've been able to overcome that and now use it as a way to help impact and help people with that. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We got actually the guys there's an organization called Battle Cancer. I don't know if you've heard of them. They'll be in town next week. And yeah, we're excited to get to do some stuff with them. Here at Mayhem, we're going to do a program where people who are currently recovering from chemotherapy can come and train at Mayhem for free. And that's all organized like by Battle Cancer. So yeah, man, fired up about like the actual, part of what we do is service here. And it's been lacking, if I'm being honest, for me. We've got all the value-based shirts. We've got, a prayer shirt. We've got a serve shirt. And for me, I won't wear the serve shirt right now because I'm not doing a good job of serving. So it's one of my goals for 2022 is to get back into like, hey, serve, do something for people that need your help, and give back in a way that's unique to you and your abilities.
That's so good. I'd love one of those praise shirts. Those are so sweet.
I got you. We got hoodies too. They're super dope.
Oh, really? Gosh, the
Yeah.
black on black is fire. You guys listening to this, go check them out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. And just so people know, the praise shirts actually go to our 501c3. So it's
wow.
It is also benefiting like our actual mission.
That's incredible, man. I love what you guys are doing. And I'm so glad we had the opportunity to talk about it, because I think just sharing it more and just letting at least one more person hear the story and just get inspired to do the same thing you guys are doing is how you carry it on and continue to impact. And that's so dope, man. My last two questions for you, man. This has been incredible. What is your favorite CrossFit workout?
Grace.
All right.
Short duration.
Explain what it is.
Okay. So Grace is 30 clean and jerks for time at 135 pounds. It's the only workout that I've gone into, like, not just with confidence, but extreme cockiness in my, you know what I mean? Because again, I wasn't like a competitive athlete, but I was, I took the Pepsi challenge a couple of times. Like I went to 2009 regionals when you could just sign up and show up. Wow. And I did, a couple local throwdowns and obviously did the open against Adrian every once in a while. And so moderately weighted barbell cycling with a duration less than 2 minutes it's my jam. It's where I want to live. So really sprinty type stuff. And I would lay that over wall balls and rowing, and any sprint intervals I feel pretty good about.
That's awesome. I love that. And then my second one was like, if you could give a workout, what's a good entry level workout for someone just trying to get into CrossFit that might've heard this conversation and got a little excited? Like what's a starting point?
Excuse me. I think first and foremost is I highly recommend finding a gym with a good reputation and understanding that your experience with CrossFit is oftentimes as good as the coach that you find and that you utilize. And by the way, if you go to a CrossFit gym and you think, wow, this is dangerous and I don't really think this is for me, you went to the wrong gym. It's not the protocol. Like CrossFit is inherently safe. It's very, very effective. It's the way that you utilize it, right? Like a Lamborghini could be like the smoothest, fastest car on earth if the driver is great. But if you get into a Lamborghini and you don't even know how to drive a stick shift, like you're going to screw something up and probably hurt yourself. So that would be my first recommendation is the price tag's higher, but the whole reason that CrossFit was massively successful was because the coaches are professionals and they spend a lot of time on enhancing that skill and working with people to oftentimes save them from themselves. Like the worst people that come into the gym are former athletes who remember what it was like to be fit, but they've been sitting on the couch, like doing 12-ounce curls for the last 10 years. And all of a sudden they want to get back in and be a hero and they end up in the hospital. So that would be first. But if you're going to do something at your house, I would recommend I would recommend this. I would recommend a variation of Cindy, which is 20 minutes of 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 air squats. But I would recommend that you start with 10 minutes and you do some sort of a scaled pull-up, which if you Google scaled pull-ups, you'll have a million different options from ring rows to banded pull-ups, because pull-ups can kind of jack you up if you haven't been doing them for a long time. I would recommend doing that at a decent pace, but not trying to swing for the fences. It really shows people that like, hey, wow, I could be in this 4-foot perimeter and still get a cardio hit from just doing pull-ups, push-ups, and squats. And they understand the time duration is different, and I can score things, and I can get more rounds than my buddy got. And it's really hard to come up with an excuse. Like, it's pretty easy to find one pull-up bar, and I don't need anything but the ground to do push-ups and squats.
I love that, man. We're gonna test it with the AIM fam next week before we drop your episode of the podcast. So we'll let you know how we do it.
Have you done real Cindy?
Yes, I have. So like my background in CrossFit, I don't know how much I shared with you. Like I finished playing college basketball in May. So like I took about 2-3 weeks where I was like, I'm just going to get jacked. I'm going to bodybuild, no cardio, just try to put on muscle. And I hated it, dude. I did not like it. Cause I love, like, I do like to lift, but I love to learn running. And so then I was like, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself. So I'm gonna go on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I trained for a marathon and ran a marathon in December. And I was like, that was cool. I'm glad I checked that off the list, but I definitely don't want to be strictly an endurance athlete. So I'm like, I guess CrossFit is the blend. So that's kind of where I've gotten into. But I'm really excited to learn and kind of build the foundation. I just have so much to learn, but that's the exciting part. I just love to compete and go so hard.
Totally, man. Well, yeah. Just remember, it's like basketball, right? Like,
exactly.
If I walked out there right now and I'd, try to take the court, I'd probably like break both ankles and, end up with a torn hamstring. But if you work up to it, and that goes from everything from like the basic fitness to the skill-based stuff to actually going hard and playing in a game.
100%. Yeah, I'm excited. I want to come train with you, man. We got to set it up soon.
Let's go. Yeah. We'd love to have, we say this all the time, but it's literally an open door policy. There's people here right now from Hong Kong, from Brazil, from, it's one of the most traveled destinations, I think, in the CrossFit world. Not just because Rich and Haley and like all the top athletes are here, but also because it's a fantastic gym with tons of cool equipment and a great vibe and a great community. So yeah, the door is absolutely open. Like, please.
Let's go. I'll be there soon, man. I'll take you up on that, man. And I just can't thank you enough for all that you do. Not only just jumping on this podcast, but everything you're doing, to make an impact and help people, man. I love it. I look up to it, and I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you, brother. This has been fun.
Thanks, man.